Hello friend. I want to tell you about the BMW M5 E39 car. The turn of the 20th and 21st centuries is considered by many to be the period in the automotive industry when the last, truly decent cars were created. This will certainly be confirmed by fans of many brands, and it can be safely said about sports limousines. A good example is the BMW M5 E39. There will be no such car again. And most importantly, today this model can be bought for quite reasonable money. Porsche is in his league. In fact, looking like almost any E39, the M5 is a little different from the standard sedan. The body is reinforced, the suspension is tuned completely differently, the braking system is much more efficient. If the car weren't a four-door, upper-class sedan, it could just as easily be called a pure sports car. While AMG and Quattro built fast sedans at the turn of the century that played in their own league, BMW presented a vehicle in 1999 that could compete with truly sports machines, such as the Porsche 911. Its predecessor could be, for example, the Lotus Carlton, the most powerful and fastest sedan in the world at the time. The BMW M5's class was confirmed by numerous tests, in which journalists gushed over the engine and suspension. The car can only accelerate to 250 km per hour due to an agreement between the German manufacturers, but it reaches the first 100 in 5.3 seconds. After removing the limiter, you can easily reach 300 km per hour. Acceleration in the entire rev range is shiver-inducing, and the bond with the car is at a level unseen in any other limousine in this segment. Even today, it is hard to find a worthy competitor. The only electronics that could interfere with natural driving, the DSC system, could be switched off. What is the reason for such low minimum prices and high maximum prices? First of all, it is due to the care of the cars and mileage. Cheaper cars have covered at least 200,000 kilometers, and for such an engine it means that it may be close to repair. Users claim that this is the limit from which costs start to drastically increase and faults appear. When deciding to buy a BMW M5, you can choose two paths. The first is to buy a cheaper car and drive it until it breaks down. In the meantime, you may be able to enjoy it. However, we do not recommend this method for a simple reason. It may be harder to sell a damaged M5 than to buy a well-maintained one. Unfortunately, just as the BMW E39 is a solid machine, due to the performance and load of the mechanisms, the M5 is very delicate. Of course, if it is fully functional, it will endure a lot, but it also does not take much to destroy it. The most sensitive area is the engine. M5 is not armored. The nearly 5-liter unit requires very careful warming up. The manufacturer himself took care of this by installing active rev counter lighting. If the engine is cold, the red zone is expanded with orange diodes. They set the upper limit of revs to which you should drive. As the temperature increases, these diodes go out and raise the maximum rev limit. Heat in general is one of the most important topics for M5 owners. There are known cases of engine overheating due to even a trivial failure of the cooling system. A non-functioning fan or a leaky radiator can be deadly. A general engine overhaul is possible, but it is very expensive. You can't just buy a used cylinder head or grind the block. Such elements are replaced with new ones. Topic number 2 is the Vanos variable valve timing system, which has probably never been known for its above-average durability in any BMW, unlike Honda's VTEC. How to recognize the first problems? By the characteristic clattering heard in the upper part of the engine. A slight clattering on a cold engine is still something that can be considered normal, but if it is loud and does not quiet down, then sooner or later you will have to go to the service. The timing chain also makes similar sounds. Theoretically, it is very durable, but if the engine has not been carefully warmed up, the chain can stretch significantly. Either way, replacing one or the other costs hundreds of dollars. Original parts cost 5 figures. These aren't all the monsters you can find in the BMW M5. The electronics in this model tend to fail. although it's not particularly painful for your wallet if you find a good workshop specializing in cars of this make. Errors signaled on the dashboard and failures of sensors, valves, throttle, stepper motor, etc. are the norm. It is absolutely necessary to keep an eye on the oil level. If you buy a car that has the minimum of this substance, then we have bad news. The drive unit may already be worn out. It can consume a liter per 1,000 kilometers during intensive driving, and this is not a sign of wear. If the owner does not check the oil at least once a month, then he simply does not take care of the car. Unless he drives mainly in the city and does small mileage, there is no need to worry about the suspension and brake system. However, it is worth remembering to keep these areas in full working order. The suspension can be purchased from replacements, but we only recommend good companies. Fortunately, there is no particularly complicated technique here. Yes, this is a car created for everyday driving. Good workmanship and equipment, as well as very decent driving comfort, contribute to this. However, gentle use does not mean low costs. 15L, 100 kilometers is the petrol consumption that can be considered minimal. Normal fuel consumption usually reaches around 20L, 100 km. We are talking about everyday use. Contrary to appearances, this is not little, and you can feel it when using the M5 as a normal car. Apart from that, it's a really cool car, not particularly eye-catching, and yet so powerful that it can compete with some modern sports cars. It looks like another slightly modified BMW 5 in the crowd, but there's a monster under the hood. This inconspicuousness is probably the most enjoyable aspect of owning this car. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.
I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car, what breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with, and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro.